Hey, how you doing?
Good, good. So, hey guys, we are just getting on started a little bit early. Hi, Denton and Karen and Lynn. Hey guys, I was wondering if you could just let us know not only where you're calling from. Hey, Erica, and not only where you're calling from, but also what is your most used design application? What do you use on a regular basis or most of the day, whether it be Photoshop or Illustrator, InDesign, Quark Express, Sketch, anything like that? Erica says Photoshop. Excellent. Very cool. Thanks, Erica. Oh my gosh, you're using Photoshop a lot? Wonder what are you working on lately? Very cool. Editing photos mostly. Well, then that works perfectly.
A lot of people use Photoshop for things that you might not expect sometimes, website design,
Right.
mock-ups, things like that are all done in Photoshop.
That's so painful to do.
Well,
Mock-ups.
yeah, they're getting better. I mean, Photoshop is integrating a lot of tools that allow you to do certain types of design. But then, of course, as you mentioned, there are a lot of tools that are actually designed specifically for application mock-ups and things like that, like Sketch and or Adobe XD or a variety of different tools out there that you can use for that.
There are so many web tools coming out right now. I mean, not only Sketch and Adobe XD, there's Figma, there's Axure, there's, oh my gosh, just the website of that is exploding right now. Eric from Chinatown is using Illustrator. Excellent. There's a lot of Illustrator users.
Yeah, Illustrator is definitely one of the more common ones. Illustrator and InDesign are the ones that we find are most common in usage for designers that we work with. Well, we work with a lot of publishers as well, so Illustrator is good, but InDesign is essential for them to get from point A to point B. Especially whatever type they're publishing, they're doing. If they're doing newspaper or circulars or books or whatever, pretty much everything goes through InDesign.
Right, right. So I hope you guys can hear us okay. I assume that you can hear us because you're putting in the applications that you're using. So we'll just get started in just a second. Let everyone know that we're going to get started here. It's already 11. Please use the share button underneath the video to let your friends and family know your family, like your family is watching this.
Fonts? What's that?
Exactly. So as we get started, I wanted just to welcome everyone here to Typography Dojo. I'm your host, Rachel Elner, and I'm calling in from Los Angeles at TypeEd. We are typography education here. And I'm joined by Jim Kidwell, all the way from Portland, Oregon at Extensis. And Jim, do you want to tell us where you are specifically? It looks like a spaceship.
I'm not on a spaceship. This is my little webcast room. I do a lot of webcasts here specifically for our company, and I'm very happy to be invited to be in the dojo. So this kind of feels like a dojo, but yeah, it's just a little basically closet that we have a little bit of a soundproofing in, so you don't hear all of the programmers out there doing what they need to do. Granted, they're a pretty quiet bunch.
They're pretty quiet. I would assume so. They're not yelling unless they're really rowdy. Hey, so guys, if you just jumped in, please let us know what design application you use most. Hey, Rosie, how are you doing? Rail, go ahead and reload your browser. It says you said that something's wrong loading with your stream. Just reload your browser. That should work. Hey, Bernardo, how are you doing? From Philly, and Rosie's from Seattle. Rosie's using InDesign and Illustrator. And Crystal's using InDesign and Illustrator. Looks like Adobe is taking over the world.
Adobe already has done that. You weren't paying attention. They snuck up on you.
I know, right? Karen's using Illustrator and Inkscape. Interesting. Josie is using Illustrator. And Bernardo says he uses all the Adobe stuff. Yes.
All the Adobe stuff. That's common. Yeah.
Do you guys use Sketch? Do you use Adobe XD? Any of the screen-based design or prototyping applications? Let us know. Okay, very cool. So Jim, can you introduce yourself a little bit and how you got into software engineering?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So my name's Jim Kidwell, and I'm here in Portland, Oregon, and I've been at Extensis for almost 15 years now, so it's been a very long run here. Prior to that, I've worked at a couple of different other software companies, but I've got a background in journalism and publishing, and so kind of fonts have been in my blood for a long time, and it's just kind of, I hit a sweet spot when I got here, and that's why I've been here for so long, because it's a good company to work for, and I kind of love the subject matter. So I have lots and lots of stories to share, so hopefully I won't bore you.
I'm really excited, actually. Lynn says that she uses Adobe CC and Sketch. Rosie says, a recruiter I heard last week talk, he got a portfolio that was 100% in Sketch. Whoa.
Oh,
he
wow.
thinks Adobe has peaked and that Sketch could take over.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know about
got
that.
a lot of tools that do a lot of things that Sketch doesn't. It depends what your workflow is, and we found that some niche tools for specific jobs are really starting to take off. So just for example, like if you're a video editor, Adobe After Effects is probably your tool, and you probably only use that. And there are other things out there that you could use, like Nuke or something like that too, or Premiere. But it depends what you need to do.
I was hoping that someone could just create one application for everything, so you don't have to keep switching back and forth.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, the code backend, I don't want to see what that is. I mean, Photoshop has been around forever, and they've got some really powerful code in there, so you can actually open these massive files and not have it totally bring your computer down.
Right.
They do some really fancy stuff with that application. You can open a 2 GB file and it doesn't throw your computer sideways. That's thanks to all the magic that the Photoshop team does. So.
Right. Yeah. Well, it also helps if you have a good computer that can open those files as well.
True. Very true.
Jim, what was your first computer?
An Atari 800.
And
I started out with a tape drive, and then I moved up to a 5 1/4 inch floppy, and then I got 2 5 1/4 inch floppies. So I was really highfalutin in the world with my Atari 800. In BASIC, yes, I made my own little programs and would save them off to disk, and I made some stuff back in the day. Dungeons and Dragons, dice rollers, things like that.
That's fun.
Yeah, some educational programs, things like that. But I am not a hardcore programmer at all. I don't make the software around here. I'm more of the guidance kind of role. So I help bring customer needs to the attention of the engineers so we can actually build products that you want. And so in some of the stuff that I'll show you today, we'll be able to talk about that.
Okay. Well, let's get started. So if you guys have any questions while Jim is talking, please put it on the questions and answers tab underneath our video. There's 2 questions so far. Just add them during the talk. So, all right, we are going to get started. Jim, go ahead.
Okay, great. All right, so we're here to talk about font management fundamentals. I've got a whole bunch of stuff to show you, so please go ahead and as Rachel said, please just enter your questions down below and I'll get to them at the end. So here's basically what I plan on talking about. You don't have to memorize this whole thing. This is just basically what I'm going to go through. And if there are questions that are outside of this that you're not getting answered, you want to have answered, please just let me know and I'm happy to talk about it. And if we run out of time, you can email me directly or tweet me directly or whatever, and I can get you answers. So to get started, why would someone ever want to use a font manager? And typically, if you're in the space where you're saying, I need a font manager, it's probably because you have a large number of fonts. With our Suitcase Fusion product, we do have an anonymous callback feature, which kind of sends some basic data back to us so we can understand both what people are using and then also, if our product is functioning as desired, right? So if it crashes over here or does that, we want to know about that. Typically it doesn't do that, but one of the things that we call back is the number of fonts that people have. And so the average number of fonts that we've found that designers have is usually around 4,000 fonts, and that's a lot of fonts.
Wow.
And that's a lot of fonts to have on your actual machine and active at the same time. And why is that a problem? It used to be, back in the day, applications would crash or your OS would crash if you tried to load that many fonts in there. Anymore, most operating systems, like from Apple OS 10 or what they're now calling Mac OS, is fairly stable, and you can do that. But the problem that you're going to run into is when you're trying to launch other applications, it's going to take forever for applications to launch. For example, most of the Microsoft applications on the Mac platform, when they launch the application itself, they build the font menu, the font list, when the application launches. So it says, okay, which fonts are active, and it goes through and finds every single font. If you've got 4,000 of them, it's going to take a long time for Word to launch, which doesn't really make any sense, because when you're launching Word, you're like, what's wrong with Word? Well, it's not wrong with Word. It's you've got too many fonts in there. So most people will pare down the number of fonts that are active on their system at the same time to make things a lot more snappy. And then it also does things like make your font menus a lot more shorter and concise, and you can find what you need at the moment. So that's where most people come to say, you know what, I need a font manager that I can turn things on and off. So at its core, a font manager turns things on and off. So there are a number of different types of font managers out there. At the most basic, you've got basically FontBook. So FontBook comes with Mac OS, and it's something that will allow you to turn fonts on and off. Is it an ideal font manager? Probably not. People find it clunky at times, and it doesn't really give you that many features. So you can turn things on and off, but if you have more than a couple of hundred fonts, you're probably not going to want to just rely on that. You're probably going to want to go beyond that. On the Windows side, if you're a Windows designer, which there are some of us out there, I have both Mac and PC. I go both ways. So when you're on the PC, you don't really have a font manager. The font manager that comes with Windows does allow you to hide some fonts, but basically they're still there. They're just hidden, which is kind of weird. It's not really as intuitive as FontBook is. So that's why we recommend that you if you're in a professional environment, you do need to jump up to a more professional font manager. One other thing that I will mention is that there are font viewers out there, especially on the Windows platform. You're going to find a lot of different applications out there that will do one thing and do it okay, is they will show you all of your fonts and give you previews of them. They will not allow you to activate or deactivate your fonts. Typically what they allow you to do is just see everything and compare things side by side. If that helps you, that's great. It probably won't get you to the place that you want to be if you're wanting to activate, deactivate, organize, sort, do all sorts of different things with your fonts. So consider that when you're out there looking around. We have 3 different products that we offer here at Extensis. I will go over mainly Suitcase Fusion today. That's the single user font manager, because I'm assuming that's where most people are here, is when they're needing just single user font management. It's you and your desktop, and maybe you have a work and a home machine, and that's what we'll mainly be talking about. We also have 2 other products that we sell, and I'm happy to talk about any of them if you want. The cloud-based font server basically allows you to say, I have a team of 5, 10, 20, 50 people, and you need everybody to have all of the same fonts at the same time. So when you don't have everybody synced up, you can get strange things like font replacements, where you may have an older version of a font on one machine and a newer version on another, and you get text reflows, and depending on what type of project you're working on, it can be disastrous. If you have a very tight text box and all of a sudden something changes in the kerning of a font, you can get a text overflow, and you'll have the last sentence of a story gone, or you could be missing the last couple of pages of a book if you do that, or it could add an extra signature into a book, and then there goes all of your profitability for the project. So these are the kinds of things that you deal with in a variety of different situations with publishing and things like that. So maintaining that level of consistency is important, and that's why we developed TeamSync. Same thing with Universal Type Server, same types of base font sharing needs, but also layered on top of that, a layer of protection toward licensing compliance. So one of the things that designers used to do all the time, and some still do, is they pass fonts around from person to person. It's a no, don't do that. So you don't want to necessarily be just throwing someone else's copyrighted work from person to person. But sometimes projects might come in, and you need to work on a project that's come from somebody else and someone else has built it. And if that comes into an office and all of a sudden the fonts in that project get thrown over to a server, and all of a sudden they're distributed throughout the entire company and no one knows if it's actually been bought for the company, Universal Type Server helps people maintain that compliance. So you can say, I bought this font, I have this many copies of this font, I have this many people that are actually using this font, and I can prove that this is where I am. So in that case where you get the cease and desist letter from the foundry or from whomever, it says, hey, you know what, I actually did buy this and I bought this through this vendor. So you can prove that and make sure that you are compliant. And a lot of our bigger clients especially do that. And sometimes even the smaller clients, they're doing work that is going to be noticed by lots of people. So, say for example, you have a small team that's working for Chase Bank. You submit your project to Chase Bank. You're just a small team, and Chase Bank is going to blast this thing all across the United States. There you go. You've got a situation where you could get yourself in trouble even when you're a small company. So maintaining that font compliance is important. I've done full hour-long presentations on compliance. I'm not going to do that here. I'm going to mainly focus on font management as it sits for individuals. So what makes a font manager professional? So, as I was talking about, activation, deactivation, turn fonts on and off, give you that precise font matching. Font auto activation plugins. So you can have that set of fonts that are active on your machine all at the same time. And then when you need new fonts for an actual document, our font manager will auto-activate the fonts. So you don't even have to go into your manager and turn them on and off manually. It'll do it for you. So ideally, if you have a font manager that's working well, you don't even have to open it to have it do stuff for you, which is the best way to work, right? Just, hey, things are working for me. Also, one of the things that we run into if you've had a font collection, have been building a font collection for years, is fonts can become corrupt. And it's not a huge issue as much anymore with open type fonts, but with older PostScript type fonts, if you're moving them around and if you have a Mac laptops and desktops and you're moving them around a Windows network, you can get the resource forks strip off of those, and those basically are corrupt. Or you can have your PostScript pairs, you need two fonts, two actual files to make a PostScript Type 1 font function, and you can have one of them missing. And so there's a level of corruption checking that should happen at the font manager level that says, okay, this font will actually function on the machine and you don't need to worry about it, or let's kick this out and maybe you can actually use this for one specific project, or just barely do this, or maybe even try to repair it yourself. So the font manager will try to do that, or ours will. It'll try to fix whatever it can for commonly known errors, but if it can't fix it, then it's just going to say, no, you can't use this. This isn't a good idea. You're going to have some instability in your entire process, whether that's at your computer or when you try to push it through a publishing process. A good font manager also keeps your fonts in a secure location so you can't inadvertently delete them. I mean, how many times have we done that? Oops, I just deleted that thing and that was the only copy I had. A font manager should keep that away. And I already talked about the distribution and server level needs. So to show you how everything works, I'm basically going to go in and show you everything. Whoa, look at that.
That's exciting.
Window after window after window. Okay, so I'm coming over to Suitcase Fusion. So this is just what it looks like when I install it. There's nothing here. I haven't installed any fonts. The only thing that it's done is it says, okay, I see that you have these fonts in your system font folders. So on the Mac operating system, you have multiple different locations where fonts can exist. And I've kept these in here just so you can see that there are a number of fonts that are in certain areas. And a lot of them are locked because we don't recommend you getting rid of them. But then others, you can come in and you can activate or deactivate or do what you need to do in these system font folders. So you can manage your system fonts if you want to. You can activate and deactivate them, and you can see where they all are. And the locked ones, obviously, are ones that you don't want to get rid of because it could damage your machine. If you remove all of your fonts, it used to be if you remove them all, it would basically turn your computer into a nice little brick that you could use for a doorstop, but not so much anymore. Anymore, there are typically safeguards within both Mac and PC platforms. So if you go in and you delete things that it considers absolutely positively required, it has hidden backups that'll automatically restore and say, you know what, we're not going to let you turn your fonts, your computer into a brick. So it'll protect you from yourself. The other thing,
Jim, when you install this is what you see. Basically, it can detect that your system fonts are
Yep.
I mean, or okay, great,
Yep. It
excellent.
detects everything that's on your.
Wow.
What it also detects is it detects that I am using Adobe Creative Cloud, and I have synced some fonts over from the Typekit desktop service. So if you're using, Adobe Creative Cloud, you've seen your assets, and then you see fonts. These are all the fonts that I've synced over from Typekit, and it shows me here, but we know where they are, and we want you to be able to utilize them and see them everywhere else. If you want to activate and deactivate and download and do all of that, you're still going to have to click Manage Fonts, and you're still going to have to go up and see what fonts are available to you and sync and unsync them from their website. That's just the way that Typekit functions. So that's that. But we do know where they are, and we will show you. And then you can do fun things like, set your preview, and you can see that for all of your Typekit fonts. So how do I get all of my fonts into the system? The easiest way to do it is like I have folders of fonts here. You'll see these on my desktop, lots of different fonts. All I need to do is click and drag it into my system, and there you go. Now it's actually being added. Everything is being checked as it's being added. So as I said, the corruption checking happens all now. So if you have stuff from a long time ago or stuff from random disks that you've had over the years, and maybe some not in the greatest quality, it will check everything for you. And as you see, it's all being added fairly quickly. So zip, 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 you're getting all of your fonts on there, which is great. Since I dragged in a folder, what it also did for me is it added a set. So sets are basically subsets of your entire font library, which is a nice way to organize your fonts. So if you have a number of different fonts that are for specific uses, say for example, I've got this Extensis fonts collection, and these are all of the fonts that I know that we need for Extensis branded items. I can keep them all into a specific folder, and then I can just basically take them and add them to my font library. I'm going to wait until this one's done adding. Oh, look at that. It found a number of fonts that are considered corrupt. So these fonts are not great. It says, oh, what are my options that I have here? I can either add these fonts in place, or I can choose not to add them. If I add them in place, what that is doing is it's taking the actual fonts that are sitting here on my desktop and showing them in my system right here, and it's being added right there. All of the other fonts that I just added are being copied over to what we call the vault. So because these are corrupt, I'm not going to add them. So I'm going to choose Do Not Add, and I'll show you what the vault is. If you choose Suitcase Fusion and Preferences, on the Windows side, it's Tools, Preferences. Then you come over here, in the middle section it says Font Vault Options. The default option is to copy all the added fonts to the vault. So this is that security level that I was talking about. It's keeping everything in a place where you're not going to randomly say on my desktop, oh gee, I just deleted all of my fonts. So it's going to keep things out of the way. It's going to keep things in a secure location where you're not going to inadvertently do something to it. I always worry about that. I do it all the time. I've deleted things from Dropbox that I can never get back, which is very sad. So you can do that. Excuse me. So that's your setting right there. There's also, while I'm in here, I'll talk about this other thing, the Suitcase Fusion Typecore. What is the Typecore? So the Typecore is a background application that runs all the time. So you don't need to have the actual Suitcase Fusion user interface that you see back here up and running if you want to have the auto activation plugins activating fonts for you. Because this Typecore is running in the background, you don't need to have Suitcase running. It just automatically says, okay, Typecore, give me these fonts. I'm going to activate them now so my document can actually use them. So it's super fast and super easy. So that just runs in the background. If you need to stop it for whatever reason, you can come in here and do so. I usually do that because our other applications also use a Typecore, but a different Typecore, and they can conflict. So that's why we do it. But that's not common usage for most people. So I've added all of my fonts here. They're all being added to my vault. If I have more that I want to add my Extensis fonts. You'll see that I add them right here. Boom, done. They're added. They're as a set, and they're all in here. So these are all of the fonts that I know that I need for that. I can also add my trial fonts. We were talking about multiple different foundries allowing different things, different workflows for creative users to be able to use fonts in their system earlier. And trial fonts are an amazing way to do this. So this allows you to actually take fonts and say, I want to try these. And the Grilly type group with the America font, GT America, and all these things. If you haven't seen the website out there where they advertise GT America, you've got to go see it. It's a wow. It is a piece of work that is amazing and worth going to see. So if you want to Google that, GT America, go check it out. But they offer trials, so you can come and you can get your trials, and they do say trial, which is great. So it reminds you that I haven't actually bought this. I need to go buy it, and I don't know what they may have kept out of here. They may have had. They may have kept out all of the extended character sets, so you might not get all the accents on your letters, or maybe the kerning is not finalized, and so forth. So before I go any farther, I'm just going to basically give you an overview of the user interface. I've showed you a lot of things. You've seen the font library over here. You've seen that this is here. This is the preview window, obviously. Right now, what you're seeing is what we call QuickType. So you can type whatever you want, and it shows up here, which is nice. We also have a variety of other preview types that you can have. You choose one of our standard ABC 1, 2, 3 previews if you want to, and it shows you this types of text. Obviously, there's a lot of characters missing from Greeley, but if you look at this, there you go. So that's why you're not seeing anything there. But you'll see the standard character set here. We also got a paragraph, so if you want to see what this looks like in a paragraph of text, you can do that. QuickType obviously is what QuickType was, and then a waterfall. So it depends what type of work you're doing. If you want to start, most of the time you'll do QuickType is what I would recommend. So this is how this functions. Down here below is just the font list. So it shows you what's in whatever you've selected. So right now I have a set of fonts selected, and that's what's in here. And these are all grouped by family. So there are obviously multiple Calibri fonts. You have 4 different ones here. And then there's this column here, which is important, but it's usually hidden. So I have it shown just because I wanted to describe what it is, but you can hide this and it doesn't really matter to you. But what FontSense is FontSense is like a fingerprint for your fonts. So every time a font is added to our font manager, we generate a FontSense ID for that actual font itself. And this allows us to do that precise font matching that I was talking about. So if you have multiple different versions of a specific font, Helvetica is usually the common one that I say, because there are God knows how many versions of that out there. You can probably get 10, 20 different versions just from a single foundry if you want to. So for every single font and every single face, so face level all the way down to bold, bold italic, italic regular, you're going to get a different FontSense ID. It'll also vary by what type you have. So if you have Calibri bold, but it's in an open type PostScript, it's because basically OpenType is a wrapper around the actual font itself. If you have an OpenType PostScript font, it's going to give you a different FontSense ID, because in effect that is a different font itself, and we want to ensure that everything is exactly that you want it. So if you use a specific font to design a document, we want to ensure that we give that to you. So where does that come into play? That comes into play in the actual plugins itself. So if you choose Suitcase Fusion or Tools on the Windows side, and you choose Manage Plugins, you'll see all the plugins that we have. So pretty much everything from Adobe, we're going to support every common publishing application. So Illustrator, InCopy, InDesign, these are the most common ones for publishing, and then Photoshop. So these are really, really core. And then we recently added Adobe After Effects, because we found that a lot of agencies were saying, we have this other class of users that really needs to have fonts in use in their workflow, which is the video workflow, and specifically doing all these text effects. They'd rather use live text, if at all possible. So we have that as well. And if you're a Quark user, we do support that. Unfortunately, I don't have Quark 10 installed at this time. I had to remove it because I was getting ready to upgrade it. So if you have this installed, we will support that as well. And installing and removing plugins is just as simple as checking a box here. So if I wanted to remove this, all I need to do is authenticate onto my machine, and boom, you're done. So as long as you have administrative rights, rights to install and remove software, we allow you to do this. The reason that you need admin rights is because this actually goes into the app folder to add and remove the plugins themselves. So if I want to, since I've already authenticated, I can just reinstall it just by checking it there. So now that's done. So how exactly does that work? So what I can do is I can show you. I don't have hardly any files here selected, and the document I'm going to open uses a lot of these Extensis fonts. So if I choose to open this document, the plugin is running. So I'm opening my document now, and it should say, there we go. And you see that the fonts are shown as missing right now, but it should automatically activate those fonts. Are you going to activate them for me? No, you're not. Why are you not opening them for me? That is a good question.
Because you're doing a demo. That's
because why. I'm doing a live demo. That's why.
Yes, that's what
is going on here? Don't save that document. Let's try this again. All right, try it one more time. And it should automatically activate the fonts for me. Live demos are the bane of my existence. There we go. So it automatically activated those. So I didn't need to go in and say, I need to have all of these fonts. I don't know why it didn't happen the first time. That's a good question for me to
But
ask.
I love that it didn't happen the first time. So because otherwise we wouldn't have seen the difference, right?
There you go. So now you didn't see the difference. Yeah. So when you get all of those orange blocks in InDesign, for all of those who are not known of InDesign, those are orange blocks are showing that text is missing. Yeah. And usually you'll get a flash. You'll see it, and then the plugin will say, oh, okay, we have those fonts, and it'll go ahead and activate it for you. So it did that. Another thing that you'll see that the plugins do is it gives you this other menu, this Extensis menu. So if you go Window, Extensions, Extensis, that's how you bring this window up. And what this is this is a full list of everything you have in your whole entire database. So whether it's active or not on your system, you can come in here and find it, which is awesome, because if you're trying to search for something in your font list, you're only going to have what's active on your system, all right? What you're going to have in here is everything. And so if you have 10,000 or whatever fonts. I mean, the largest single user I think we've ever seen on Suitcase is 90,000 fonts, which is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah,
wow.
Yeah, exactly. That's a person who spent a lot of time downloading fonts. So that's one user who had quite a collection. But you can get them all in here, and you can obviously search for them and so forth. And you don't have to have them all activated on your system to be able to find them from your font picker. So that's how that functions here. So that's basically what you can do with the plugins. You can set it to do multiple different things, and you can tell it to work in certain ways. So these are the preferences that are available in InDesign, and this can be done in each different application itself. So InDesign has their preferences, so does Illustrator, Photoshop, InCopy. You're going to get preferences for all the different ones, so you can set them however you want. But the font sense support is what I was talking about. That's that precise font matching. You can choose to enable or disable that. You can say, okay, you know what? If I don't have the exact font, just give me the best one. I would recommend turning that off, because if you want to have everything precise, you can do that. Activate fonts and embedded objects. That's a critical one for a lot of people who do work in both InDesign and Illustrator. You can pull something together in an InDesign file, export it as an EPS, throw it into InDesign as an embedded object, and then we will actually scan that embedded object, find fonts that are required in there as well. You can also say, I'm going to be working on this document, so I need the entire family. So even if this document only uses, Rooney Pro Bold, I'll also get Rooney Pro Semi-Bold, Rooney Pro Light, Rooney Pro Normal, whatever. You'll get all of the different weights rather than just the one specific weight that is in use in the document. And then you can say, okay, when are these fonts closed? Well, when InDesign quits or when the document closes. So it varies. You can choose however you want. One thing I do want to show you is we'll go back over to Suitcase. And when you look in Suitcase, you'll see, I will just go ahead and show this by font. You'll see that all of these have the little diamond next to them. That means that they've been auto-activated for this specific document. If I want to activate fonts, that's one thing I guess I never really showed you. If I want to activate fonts permanently, I can select one or multiple fonts and click either temporary or permanent, and then that activates them on my system. And you'll see that that's where they are. So that's activation and deactivation. But auto activation is the way to go, because then you don't have to do all this manual work and you don't have to do all this picking through things. Just make sure it works automatically for you. So if you've designed a document using our plugins, we will do what we call slugging the document. So that's an engineering term. I think of like punching a document every time I hear it say that. But basically it throws those font sense identifiers in the actual document itself. It's hidden. So it's not something that you're going to see, but we scan the document, we pull all of that information out, and then we use that information to activate the fonts. The cool thing about that is this is common across all of the different font management applications that we have. So if you have Suitcase Fusion, and then your other team member is working at a company that uses Universal Type Server, they're all using the same font sense identification numbers, and every single font is always it's going to have its unique ID. It's going to have that unique fingerprint. So when those fonts are added to Universal Type Server at your friend's company, they're going to get the exact same fingerprint ID, that font sense ID. So if you pass this document over to them, they open that document, it'll say, oh, I need this exact font with this ID, and then it'll go to their system, activate the font from their system, and they'll get to use that document, and it'll look exactly like you designed it, which is perfect. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so basically the fonts, in a sense, the fonts travel with the document, even if you can't pass the actual font files around, which font EULA-wise is always kind of a variable now. So most foundries would say you can't pass fonts from one person to the next, but there are some cases in which it's considered okay. I know that when Adobe brought all of their fonts over to, I believe, My Fonts recently, they changed their license specifically for that to allow for the transfer over to an output device, and that being considered okay just for that purpose. So now, don't take me, I'm not a lawyer, but that's what I've been told by people at Adobe. So
it's been recorded.
Yes,
hey, Jim, we have a question from Rosie. She's asking if you can show us again where you find those auto activation preferences panel.
Oh, yeah. So it varies by application. If you're in InDesign, it goes Type, Suitcase Fusion, and then the preferences are right down here. So you can also do multiple other things. You can activate fonts only from one particular library. So if you have multiple different libraries in your Suitcase Fusion, you can have multiple library. You can select one library. We recommend all libraries, because then you're not going to have something saying, hey, I don't have this font, when indeed you do. It just might be in a different library. The use case for this specifically is, say, for example, you have a client that only wants you to use their fonts and their fonts only, and they want to be sure that you're restricting your use just to that. This is specifically for people who have like custom fonts built for themselves, and you want to ensure that you're only activating fonts from that library. You can click that in there, and then if a font shows up as missing, you can go like, uh-oh, maybe I used a font that wasn't in that approved library, and that's a good like reminder for you to be able to do that. So specific case, not many people are going to need to do that. You can also collect the fonts in use in a specific document for output. So if you want to do that, you can. This feature is kind of replicated by the package feature in InDesign and Illustrator now, so it's probably not long for this world. It will probably go away since Adobe has kind of solved that problem. But before the package feature exists, this was commonly in use, and checking the document's fonts is the same kind of thing. So yeah, if you want to get the preferences, that's where you get the preferences. In Photoshop, it's under the Automate menu. It just varies by application where Adobe wants us to put this thing, so it just happens to be under there. If there's a type menu, typically we try to put it in there. So yeah, so that's where that is. Okay. And if you want to get that window again, you can choose Window, Extensions, Extensis, and there you go. That's how you get that window. And that is InDesign, Illustrator, and Photoshop. Those are just those three applications we've built this pane in. All right, so hopping back over, we've got a number of different things that we've talked about. We kind of went through the various windows. I haven't touched on this window and this window. I've also got another feature to show you too. So this window over here is the info pane. So if you select a font, it will give you information about that specific font, including the font information. If you select multiple fonts, it will give you the option to select each font within there and see what that says. The other tab here, so there's the information, but then there's also the tags tab, which will give you the option to add and remove tags, foundries, and classifications and styles. So if you want to, for example, start tagging things, saying, you know what, these are funky. You know, Calibri is such a funky font. So if you say this is funky, I want to have all of these fonts tagged as funky, and then I can come in, and if I want to do a search on all of my funky fonts, it's going to give me all my funky fonts here. So funky, there we go. So now go ahead and shows me all my funky fonts. So that's the use case for tags. So if you wanna do that, that's the way a lot of people tend to organize things. We also have people create specific different sets for things if you want to. So you have all of your fonts. You know, I have my 2,800 fonts here. There's a lot of fonts. If I sort them by name, I can go through all of these and see what's here. And then if I want to start collecting them for a project, so this is my next project. I have a set that I'm creating for it. I can come over and say, okay, I need these fonts for my project. Just drag them in there. It doesn't actually move the files or anything like this. This is just a virtual collection, and then you can see all these fonts side by side. This can be extremely handy if you're trying to share these with the client and say, oh, I need to see which fonts you're going to use. For example, if you're maybe working on a logo, big company logo, and you want to share these fonts with the CEO and say, you know what, this is what I want to base our logo on. The cool thing is we've got these features up here. This snapshot feature, the little camera. It says, drag this icon to desktop to save this font preview as a PNG graphic. So this is great because then I don't have to show that CEO exactly how to install a font on their machine to use this. So you just drag this out, and then it creates a cool PNG preview. There it is. And there you go. There's my big company logo. And it's exactly like I showed it here, and it's exactly as it was typed. So it's pretty nice. It's a very easy way to do that. So that's all your previews. Also, if you're wanting to find things and you find that you're searching your library for a specific type of font or a specific grouping of fonts frequently, you can use what we call smart searches down here. So if I want to see all of the fonts that have been activated, you can click activated, and it'll show you all the active fonts on your system. If you want to see all the auto-activated fonts, you can just click there, and it shows all the fonts that are auto-activated. Same thing with duplicate fonts. So now duplicate fonts, this is something that is kind of touchy because, as I said, we have precise font matching here. So we know that that these fonts are different in some way, shape, or form. So I have 3 different versions of Adobe Caslon Pro Bold. What happens in between these? Why are they different? Well, it's probably because I have different versions. Yep, see, I have different versions, 3 different versions of Adobe Caslon Pro Bold. 2.059, 2.096. Which one do I want to keep? Well, I might want to keep them all because there may have been some changes in between one version and the next, and the document that I'm outputting might rely upon the kerning being exactly the same in every single one of these. So you're going to have text overruns or all sorts of different things if you switch a font. So a lot of people prefer to keep these duplicates. It depends on what type of work you're doing. If you say, you know what, I just want the most current version that has all the bugs fixed because a lot of people don't think about it, but fonts are software, and they do have bugs, and things do happen, and foundries do their best to fix them. That maybe getting that most current version is important. And if you're having problems with a font, this is just a plug for foundries now. If you're having problems with a font, you can come to us and say, you know what, we're having problems. Is it the font manager? Well, if it's the font manager, we're going to own up to it. But if it's not, and we think that there's a problem with the font, we're going to refer you to the foundry. And a lot of these foundries are really great to work with. So all you need to do is call them up, shoot them a message online, and say, hey, I'm having problems with this. And a lot of people will get, the foundry will be like, oh, I'm so happy you shared this with us. We wanted to get this fixed, and here's a free copy of the upgrade. So that has happened. I've heard that story more than once, and so working with these foundries is a really good thing to do. And most of the time, they're smaller groups of people, and they're very happy to hear from their end users. So,
Jim, on the topic of duplicate fonts,
yeah.
when they do an update, say that you're saying that they actually fix the bugs and whatnot, does the font sense, is it a new font sense number every time they do an update? Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yep. So that's when you get a new version. So when you get a new version, if they're updating the version number, you're gonna get a new version. But I bet there were a lot of different versions in between 2.059 and 2.096 that I don't have. So so I have a feeling that you're not going to have all of these. But that's the reason that we keep all of these. So we will only remove what we call true duplicates. So if you have another copy of this one particular font file out there somewhere and you add it to your system again, it's going to just say, oh, you don't need that copy. You already have that because it has an identical font sense ID. So we will remove true duplicates, but we will allow you to keep other variable duplicates. So another way you can do things, which I recommend, is building a smart search. So one of the examples that I like to use is, say, I can choose Edit, Find Fonts. And then that brings up my find window here. I want to find all of my script faces. So I want to find anything where the PostScript name contains script. Oh, I don't have any. That is funny. Okay. Oh, name contains script. Oh, do I have a filter on or something that I don't know? Huh. Oh, come on, I've got to have it. Interesting. Oh, maybe I don't have scripts in this library. Oh, no, wait, there it is. SCRIP. I was probably just, I was spelling script wrong. Sorry about that. So yeah, you search on script, and then you get everything that has script in the name. But then you can also search on, for example, classification. And we try to classify everything. So you could say classification matches script. So that's going to give you even more fonts. So it gives you lots of different fonts in your collection. And then what you can do is you can click the save icon over here, and then that gives you a smart search. And you say script, SCRIPT, I can't spell. And so now every time I click on this, it's going to automatically run this search and give me all of the fonts that match my selection, which is pretty good. So if you're doing this all the time, you're going to have all of this. So there's another couple of types of features that I want to go through real quick. Another thing that we find a lot of people like is Google Fonts. So if you are a Google Fonts user, you can actually download all of the Google Fonts for your personal use onto your system, which is open source and free, which is cool. So if you enable Google Fonts, we automatically stay in sync with everything that's new. I think when we first enabled this, there were like 700 Google Fonts. And so now there are 1,900. Every time I come in here, there are more and more and more, which is awesome. So if you want an instant font collection and you're just starting out as a designer and you want a lot of different things that you can choose from, this is a great way to do it. There is, well, I will say there is variable quality in here. So there are a lot of there are a lot of things that are good. There are a lot of things that are not so good. So choose your fonts wisely. And it depends on the use, obviously. If you're just doing a flyer for your neighborhood garage sale, it might not matter as much. But if you're using a professional design, it's going to be localized into multiple different languages. Make sure you check and see which characters are available in there, because there may not be a full character set in some of these in here. But yes, these are all open source, and they're all free to use in whatever types of ways that you want. So so all of that is available, which is very cool. There's another feature that's really fun, and it's a brand new one that we just enabled. It's called TypeSync, and TypeSync is basically a cloud-based syncing tool. So if I choose my library and I choose Enable Library Syncing, what that does is that says, okay, all of these fonts are going to be synced up to the Extensis cloud. So we've got a Amazon Web Services backed web server that is up in the cloud. And it basically takes all of your font sense IDs and says, okay, I want to push all of these up to the cloud. And then for any font sense ID that we don't have, we'll take the actual file. So the syncing of these, 2,800 fonts should not take all that much time because it's just pushing up all the font sense data. So it says, okay, all these font sense IDs, what do I have, what do I don't have? It pushes it all up to the cloud. And this has a couple of different benefits for you as a user. Basically, you can sync all of these fonts over to another machine, because when you buy Suitcase Fusion, you get the rights to use it on up to 2 machines. I have a Windows machine at home and a Mac machine at work, and I use this to sync my fonts from home and work, which is really handy. This is also an instant backup because we have basically a single copy of every single font. Known to man or known to our users. We have a massive collection up in the cloud that's sitting up there, and it's only accessible to you. So these are only your fonts. If you build some custom font that is just for you, this is only you. No one else can get your fonts. When you, say, for example, are walking across the street and you drop your laptop and it breaks into 1,000 pieces, you can go buy the new laptop, install Suitcase Fusion, connect Suitcase Fusion to the cloud, and you're automatically going to have all of these fonts downloaded to your machine, which is super handy and very, very nice, because you don't have to worry about those extra backups. So at least you won't be losing your fonts, is what I usually say. So
you just lost your laptop.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And most people don't like that. We did have a product manager here for a while. Actually, it was Thomas Finney, was riding his bike across an intersection in Portland, and his laptop went flying out of his bag, and it was skidding across the intersection, which is never a good thing for a laptop. And so, fortunately, we had other backup systems available too. But if we had had this, his fonts would have been easily backed up to the cloud. So there are other ways to back up files in Suitcase. I'm not going to go through everything because I also wanted to go into working with a small team. So if you're working with a small team and all of you are wanting to use Suitcase Fusion, we do have a product which we call Suitcase TeamSync. Suitcase TeamSync is basically a cloud-based system that relies upon TypeSync, which is the feature in Suitcase, to sync all of your fonts. So you can have all of your users set up within here, and say, for example, this is me. I'm right here. That is my real email address. So if you want to email me, that's fine. So, and I choose me, and then I assign some libraries to me. Like I have all of these fonts that I want to assign to me. Okay, now I have all of these 5 libraries, and I'm connected to the cloud, obviously. And I choose File, Synchronize Fonts. And what that does is that goes up to the cloud and says, oh, okay, I need to synchronize these fonts. What fonts does he have access to? Boom. I went ahead and synchronized all of these fonts down from the cloud. So I'm pushing down 2,800 fonts from the cloud, and they're all being downloaded from the cloud to me right now. So this can take a variety amount of time, depending on how many fonts you have. But when it comes down to it, this is pretty darn fast no matter where you are in the world. We use edge servers that are all over the place. So wherever you are, it's going to be coming down to you super duper fast. So that's basically all you need to know. And then I can go into these different libraries and see all of the different fonts in these different libraries, and they're all being synchronized down. And the cool thing is that as I'm working with my other team members, they can say, oh, okay, you know what, we need to add more fonts to our branding fonts, and they can drag fonts in here, and then those fonts are automatically synced to my machine. I don't need to do anything to go out and grab it or anything like that. And we're all using Suitcase because Suitcase is a tool that we're all familiar with. So that's the way TeamSync works. That's the way it keeps everybody in sync. It uses all of the same font auto activation plugins and all of the same search features that you've come to know. So that's the way TeamSync functions. It is instead of a perpetual license, that is a subscription service, much like Adobe Creative Cloud. So it's an annual subscription, and it's a fairly affordable thing per user. A lot of people also use this for agencies where they might need to synchronize fonts to freelance users, for example. So you can come in and say, okay, I'm going to add Isaac Asimov to one of my projects, and I'm going to give him 2 different libraries, and this is what he's going to use to to do his design work. And then once he's done, all I need to do is come in and say, oh, okay, I need to remove this user. Or you can, unassign his libraries. You can say, okay, he doesn't need these fonts anymore. And he can still be in here if you want, but you can just get rid of him. And so he no longer has access to those fonts. So that's the way TeamSync functions.
Very cool.
Yeah. I know I've gone through a lot, and maybe I should probably leave some time for questions. I haven't gone into Universal Type Server. I don't know if the audience is interested. You can ask me questions. But we should probably open it up for questions right now. So what do you think, Rachel?
Sure. Is there any more to the presentation that you want to go over,
or
did you
know what? That's a good point. So
I know you're in the middle of the presentation.
Sorry. Yeah, there's show and tell.
That's okay.
Show and tell. Thank you for reminding me. Okay, so
sure.
Q&A. So
okay.
A couple of things. You'll see a number of links on here. The font management best practices guides, we have multiple different guides. We have one for Mac OS, we have one for Windows, and then we have one for server-based font management. So depending on your environment and how you're using your tools, you can download one or all of these. They're all free, so just come get them. We do offer free trials of Suitcase, so come over to our website. You can download it and use it for 30 days for free. We do have specifically for this environment, so thank you for coming or watching the webcast recording if you're watching it. You get 15% off by using the code Dojo15, and you'll get 15% off of a Suitcase purchase if you'd like. That's good through the end of April, I believe. Suitcase TeamSync, you also have a free 30-day trial. Same thing with Universal Type Server, free 30-day trial if you want to use that. If you're interested in Type Server, I would recommend you maybe talk to somebody first to figure out exactly if that's what you want, because that is setting up and running a server on your own home premise. And if you're tech savvy and you feel like doing that, that's cool. If you would just prefer to talk it through with somebody and see if it's going to meet your needs, that's probably a better option. You can also shoot me questions over at Jim Kidwell or email me directly at the email you saw earlier, jkidwell@extensis.com. So questions?
Or we can just ask questions right now.
Yes, you can do that too. And I'm happy to stick around as long as you might need.
Okay, very cool. Well, close your window. So if you want to jump back to us, that'd be great. We do have quite a few questions, and thank you everyone for letting everyone know or letting your friends know that we're on and asking questions. So I'm just going to read them as they have been voted up. If you see a question underneath that you feel you would like the answer to sooner than later, please vote it up as well. So Jim.
Yeah.
Paolo asked, I want to search by tags or drill down by category, but doing it yourself takes too long. Can you import community-based or third-party tags or categories that have already had this done?
Oh, wouldn't that be sweet?
I would love that.
So that is something that we've definitely been talking about. It's not a current feature that we have right now. So open sourcing this kinds of stuff. So allowing users to say, okay, I've spent a lot of time tagging all my fonts. I want to share this with the world. We'd like to be able to do that. And now that we have the cloud-based server, we're going to have that ability. So that is good feedback to have, and I will definitely bring that back to our engineering team to implement in the future, perhaps. It's something we've definitely talked about, but that's a great thing. And you're right, tagging things can be a pain. So when you do all of this, like if you want to set up tags or if you want to create sets or whatever, the good thing is like as you upgrade from one version to the next, your previous database always comes with you. So all of your fonts and all of that work that you've put into it always stays with you. So yeah, so that's a good thing for you. So don't worry about losing all of that work.
So just branching off of that question, and thank you, Paolo. I hope that helps. Just branching off of that question, can you select many fonts at one time and then tag them all as a group?
You betcha. So
okay, we don't have your screen up.
Oh, you don't?
Sorry.
Oh, okay.
No.
You don't want me to show stuff? Yes,
no,
we can show off stuff if you'd like.
So community-based tags would be very difficult, right? In terms of, well, not everybody will tag theirs the same, correct? You would have to do
so
a little bit of filtering, or
there would have to be some logic built into the back end to say, okay, what are the common things? Like, so for example, you have a font sense ID in particular, and 90% of people use this one particular tag for it, then that's what that tag is going to get probably, you know, or there could be multiple different options that you could choose to add and remove and so forth. So yes, there'd have to be some definite logic built into a feature like that. I mean, if you look at other online sites, there are abilities that you can do for searching that. Like you go to My Fonts and you search by something, that is community-based tagging there as well, and not everybody's going to tag it the same.
I see.
Yep.
So it'd be also nice if the type designer tagged it as well,
Wouldn't that be
just
awesome?
like they do, just like photographers do when you search stock photography sites.
Yeah.
I mean, they build in those tags, and then it'd be anyhow. Yep. The wish list goes on and on.
Well, yeah, and classification systems vary by designer as well. So we have chosen a very common classification system, but not everybody wants to say, you know, I know what a Clarendon font is, or I know what a Humanist Sans font is. Not everybody does, so they might just lump all of those into sans serif fonts and call it done. So it varies by user as to how they want to do that, and plus some people have funky classifications. So this is a common thing that type designers and designers like to argue about. So feel free to open up that argument, but please don't argue with me, because this is just a common thing that we do.
Just do it on Twitter, please. It's where it's happening.
There you go.
Okay, so Rosie has a question. Do you have a recommendation for a freelance designer? So a desktop plus laptop, font sets from multiple clients. Oh, Rosie says, it looks like you already answered this.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you have a desktop and a laptop, obviously Suitcase is going to work for you. So you get 2 copies when you license it, so you can use it in 2 different places. Yeah. So now if you have 3 machines, at that point, that's when you probably want to go into a TeamSync type situation. But is it going to be cost effective for a single user to do that? Maybe not. So yeah, you can actually use it on 3 machines, but you just have to keep deactivating one. So it's not exactly the most convenient. But as you saw, pushing fonts down from the cloud happens really fast. So you could just keep doing that. You keep syncing them back and forth if you have multiple machines and one you don't use very often. So if
you have multiple machines, I'm sure you're just used to activating and deactivating.
Sure.
Anyhow.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I prefer to just keep things in sync. And so for me, just 2 machines is fine. I don't need to manage any more hardware than 2.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So Bill has a great question. What's the best way to organize fonts in terms of libraries for use in Adobe software? By classification? If I want to quickly see all available serifs, for example, is there a way to do that?
If you want to quickly see all of serifs, that's super easy. Just come into the search, in the quick find and type serif. And you're going to get all the serifs. So that'll be an easy way to do that if you really want to do that. If you want to organize things by smart searches, you can easily do that too. So type in serif and do a search on all serif faces, and you can do that. So that's fairly simple. So
it doesn't go by the name necessarily. The smart search actually has many different ways to search.
The smart search has many different ways to search. So okay. I'm not sharing my desktop, am I? You can't see me.
No, but if you'd like to reshare it, you can.
Oh yeah, okay.
We do have 5 more questions though. So.
Oh, we do? Okay, I'll skip there. So yeah, you can create a smart search for that search on many different criteria of the font itself. So you don't have to go through the entire work of building permanent sets. And those smart searches will automatically update whenever you add new fonts. So if you're using a static set and you add a new serif font to your library, you're not going to have that automatically added to that set. So I would recommend using smart searches anyway, because it just basically says, here are the criteria that I want to find fonts based on. Run this search every time I click on this thing. And then you don't have to rebuild that search every time you do it. So it makes it a lot easier. Okay. So it's the similar methodology to what Google's using for its mail. You keep all of your mail, but then you just go in and search and find what you need to find. So using whatever criteria you want.
It's a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Hopefully that helps, Bill. So Richard Fink has a question.
Sure.
There's been some talk about Apple's seeming neglect for the past years of their desktop/laptop products, which seem to be frozen in time. Have you seen any sign of movement towards Windows as a platform?
So yes and no. So designers are still in love with their Apple products, and do see a lot of agencies still using Apple products, specifically the iMac. iMacs are very common in choice for, believe it or not, for IT groups to actually buy a whole bunch of iMacs because you get everything all in one. You get a new monitor. It's just basically plug and play, go. That being said, I've seen a lot of interest and excitement around the new Surface machines coming out of Microsoft, specifically with the design community, because they're built specifically for designers to work in ways that they want to, and using pens directly on the page without a separate Wacom tablet or whatever, or buying the high-end Wacom monitors that you can actually write on. So there's a lot of interest there, and we've seen. Specifically, we've seen a lot of move in the design community in the video space going towards Windows. And the main reason that they go towards Windows is because, as you're right, Richard, the stagnation in the actual Apple community for upgrading, video cards and so forth. Like if you're a video person and you're trying to render video, you rely on those graphics cards to do a lot of the heavy lifting. And if you've got a new graphics card out there on a Windows machine, you just pull it out, put the new one in, and make sure your drivers are good, and you're done. Yeah. On a Mac machine, you're kind of stuck. So for all of the video editing side and the video creation stuff is all on the Windows side. And as I mentioned, all of our stuff is cross-platform. So if you have both Mac and PC, you can be running a Mac at work and a PC at home, like I am, and sync all of your fonts through TypeSync and get them all in one location and the other as well. The one caveat to that is that there are fonts that are platform-specific. A lot of you probably already know this. People try to use Mac PostScript fonts on the PC all the time, and they will not function. And so if you're trying to sync fonts across a platform like that, say, for example, I have all of these non-open type PostScript fonts that most of mine are open type anymore. So if you haven't moved there, please do. But if you have standard PostScript fonts and you're trying to look at them on a Windows machine, they'll show up in your list, but you won't be able to preview them because we can't actually make them function on a Windows machine. They'll just show up red. And you'll know that you have them, but you can't use them on your Windows machine. And that goes vice versa for Windows to Mac, which is less common, but there are Windows-specific PostScript fonts that are out there.
Okay, cool. Richard said, thanks. I hadn't thought of the video market.
Yeah, it's a big one. Yeah.
It is a big one. Okay, Alasara is asking, what is the difference between Suitcase Fusion and Universal Type Client Server?
All right.
Their user interfaces look very much alike.
And that is intentional. So the idea is that we wanted to try to keep a common interface to allow people to move from one to the other fairly quickly. A lot of designers start out, at home using something like Suitcase, and then move to an agency environment where they might be working with larger teams. And so we wanted something to be easily accessible and something that someone could get into fairly quickly and start using right away. And so that's why the client itself is very similar when you go to the Universal Type client. Things are going to be very easy for you to pick up if you're moving to another world. That being said, if you're working in an agency world and you're on the IT side or the creative manager side, the back-end tools that are available to an actual IT user or a manager of a team are fairly extensive, allowing people to do all sorts of things, whether it's connecting to an LDAP server to manage all of your user adding and removing, setting up different work groups and distribution sets, and locking down permissions so people can do certain things with fonts and other people cannot do certain things with fonts, allowing people to be set up as administrators to be able to add fonts to collections and everybody else just be users. There's many different ways that people have set this up in different enterprise environments. So obviously the idea of keeping the end user experience very similar and seamless is a big deal, because we want to make sure that designers are being as productive and fast as they possibly can be. This is obviously critical at the agency level, where it seems like the pressure never stops. So yeah, so that's the reason why things look so similar. Yep, but I mean, obviously the type client will say Universal Type Client across the top of the app itself. It won't say Suitcase Fusion.
Cool. Thank you, Alasara. I hope that helps. Bill's asking in another question. I encounter a lot of system lag when I'm managing fonts. Is there a way to streamline the process so enabling, disabling, and managing font families doesn't take several minutes? I think Bill must be at an agency.
Okay, it depends. Okay, I'm not exactly sure what you're doing. If you're activating and deactivating large numbers of fonts at the same time, I would say please don't do that. Try to activate and deactivate your fonts in a very discrete manner. And the reason I say don't do that is not necessarily from our own company limitations. They're limitations of the operating system. In particular, the Mac operating system, if you try to activate a large number of fonts at the same time, you're going to run into situations where the operating system itself will kick back and say, I can't do this. And that's a known limitation on Apple's side. So if you try to activate 1,000 fonts, you'll get an error. So try to activate your fonts discreetly when you need them, or even better than that, use auto activation so it turns things on and off as they're actually needed, and then you're not going to run into those issues. Does that answer the question?
Bill, if there's any other questions branching off of that, yeah, but I think so.
Okay.
Okay. I'm hoping that's what he's doing. Otherwise, I'm not really sure exactly why there's system lag.
Yeah.
It could be across a server or whatnot.
Yeah, it could be. If your a wide area network or LAN is slow, or if you're working in a universal type server situation where we have many large worldwide companies who are running a server from one continent and they're pulling down fonts on the other continent, you might be running into certain issues. And I have settings that I can encourage a user to use to help mitigate some of the slowness. So, for example, when you sync, you pull everything down once, and then if you're syncing again with the server, it's only going to pull down the delta, the change. And so frequently that will help speed you up. So there are a variety of ways that I can help with that. If he wants to email me directly, you can do that.
Okay, cool. Lou is asking, will this video be available to download or share with others in my department so I can watch? Lou, so what we can do is, what I'll typically do is you can come back here and watch the replay, or we'll load up to YouTube and then send you the link if you need. Hope that helps. So I'm glad that you guys want to share with your departments. Alisar is asking another question. Can you add a font license in Suitcase Fusion like you could in UTC? Can you add a EULA in there as well?
No, we haven't really had a lot of demand from an end user perspective for doing that. I will definitely take your request back to the engineering team to see if they're interested in doing that in the next version that comes out, Suitcase Fusion 8. I know that we're always working on the new stuff, and they are working on the new stuff right now. But no, we don't have that ability in here right now.
Okay. Hope that helps. Alisara? That's the end of our questions. Thank you so much, Jim. I really appreciate it. Yeah. I know that we went over a little bit, guys, but I know, Jim, that you look at a lot of fonts, and I asked you before if you know how to identify fonts. So what I want to do is just test you a little bit.
Oh, geez.
That's okay.
Let's see.
Let's see if we can do this. So what I have is just a couple cards, and I'm just going to ask. If you don't know, you can ask the audience. Let's see if these guys know. So I will put up this one, and it is a test. So let me see if I can wait for it to. Sorry.
Let's see.
You guys know?
Is it a Garamond? Nope. Okay, Rosie says no. It's not a Garamond.
She loves the G. What do you guys think? Bernardo, Alisara, Paulo? Could be a Garamond. That's what she's saying. Too easy. Go ahead, Eves. Say it.
Go ahead. It's not a Garamond?
It's Baskerville.
Ah, okay.
It is Baskerville. Right. Nice, Eves. Good job. I'm sorry, it's not focusing very quickly here. Good job, Eves. All right, I have one more. Let's do another one that's a little bit easier. Oops. Hope you guys didn't see that. Okay, let's see if you guys can get this one.
Oh, boy.
Come on, focus. Focus, camera.
Man. I think Eves is right. I think it's Gil Sans.
This is a little bit easier, right?
Is it? Yeah, it's right. He got it.
It's Gil Sans. Nice. Nice, guys.
Good job.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well,
I didn't know there would be a pop quiz at the end here.
You know, I just figured you look at fonts, so I'm not sure if you know some of the basics. I thought it would be a little bit fun to.
Yeah.
Well, Eves, yes. I'll tell you, I was paid to do this. Oh, well, that would make sense. Well, excellent. Thank you, Jim. I really appreciate your time and sharing the Suitcase. And again, just to remind you all, if you guys want to purchase Suitcase, you can get 15% off with the code Dojo15. I will send a couple follow-up links for all of you. That link is good until the end of April. So I recommend it. We use Suitcase and we love it. But now after seeing all these extra features, I will definitely check these out. Thanks so much, guys.
All right.
Have a good day. And thank you so much, Jim.
Okay. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Talk to you soon.
Okay,
Okay. Bye-bye.